On the docket this week, the president-elect and the Constitution. Donald Trump not shying away from attacking some constitutional protections that many of us just assume for granted. Now, I'm sure everybody remembers Trump's tweet this week when it came to the subject of flag burning. Trump, again tweeting here, of course, nobody should be allowed to burn the American flag. If they do, there must be consequences, perhaps loss of citizenship or a year in jail. Even though the Supreme Court has ruled that flag burning is protected speech, something even the late Antonin Scalia agreed with, and citizenship cannot be taken away from people for burning a flag. And then, of course, there's Trump's position when it comes to the First Amendment. That's freedom of the press, or maybe not.
I'm going to open up our libel laws so when they write purposely negative and horrible and false articles, we can sue them and win lots of money.
If they're not nice to me. And then there's Trump when it comes to citizenship, especially when it comes to the American-born children of undocumented immigrants, or as Trump calls them, anchor babies.
If you look and if you go to the real scholars, like different people that I can give you, they will tell you somebody comes over and they have a baby on our border and it happens to be on this side of the border, we're not mandated to take care of that baby. You do not have to change the Constitution.
Real people, like, I don't know who they are, but real people. Anyway, that would seem
Joseph Smith.
Yeah, there you go. That would seem to conflict with the 14th Amendment, which states all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, period. So, is Trump right or wrong in the reading of the constitutional rights here? And how do my attorney friends feel about, it's kind of not that important a piece of paper? Doug Von Oist, the founding partner of Carson Von Oist, focusing on corporate misconduct, and he was selected by the Legal 500 as one of the most influential trial lawyers in the country, and yet he deigns us with his presence. Mayo Bartlett, an attorney at the law offices of Mayo Bartlett PLLC, former chief of the Bias Crimes Unit at the Westchester County DA's office. We'll be talking about one of his high-profile cases that just wrapped up. And also Mark Furnish, a professor at Pace Law. He's argued before the U.S. Supreme Court and a fellow Islander fan. Okay.
Long-suffering.
Yes, long-suffering. So far, not so good this year. All right, Mayo. Let's start with flag burning. There was a clip that maybe people had seen where Scalia goes, I find them reprehensible, but it's called freedom of speech. We don't have kings in this country, right?
Well, we do now.
Well, and you know what, though? Joking aside, if you close your eyes and you didn't know what was going on, he really seems to want to have a monarchy. And that Constitution's a piece of paper. I know we all love to say it's bluster and whatever else. But if you listen to what he said, and you remove the character in just the statement, he wants to remove someone's citizenship for exercising a constitutional right here, let alone imprison them for doing so.
Sure, you can go back to the days of colonialism, and then you would have that. And that's what the Founding Fathers fought against, so that you'd be able to have freedom of association, freedom of expression, freedom of speech. And the whole purpose of the Constitution was to protect the rights of the minorities. And that doesn't mean black or brown people or women, which are not minorities, but it meant minority viewpoint, so that you would not be compelled to go along with what the majority at any given time does. You can go to Afghanistan. I'm sure if you burn the flag there, you'll have a real bad consequence. If you go to Russia, you probably don't burn the flag there either.
Well, you'll have a lot of bad consequences there, short of burning the flag.
Not
your
before
sexual
you burn the flag.
preference might be.
But you know what? First off, from my world, it always happens, these things come out when there's another story that doesn't like, and it's the art of distraction. He's quite good at it. But it doesn't come without a consequence.
No, I think this is the art of distraction, because the real story is that they're burning flags, torching flags at Hampshire College, which is ridiculous. I mean, he's not speaking as a constitution.
Let's not make this sound like this is a national tragedy that we're worried here that in the middle of the night here, we're going to have massive flag burnings across the country.
Well, I think it's a little distorted that we're more worried about a tweet than people actually burning up the flag.
Here's what I'm worried. I'm not going to speak for everybody else.
We care more about the flag than we do people.
Well, we should care about the flag.
Well, not more than we do people. The flag is a symbol.
Okay, and I personally think very little of somebody who would burn the flag.
Yeah, they're cretins is what they are.
But the point is, the Supreme Court decided this. It's a law of the land. And to me, when he also says, oh, those people born here, call them anchor babies. They shouldn't be citizens. What happens, Doug, and it will happen, it's happened in every presidency, when all of a sudden something happens that scares the public?
Well, something
And then-
happened the
wait
other
a minute,
day.
wait a minute.
In Ohio State.
Okay, but
It's worth
again,
talking about.
does that mean one lunatic who takes a car and rams into people now means that an entire population of people that are citizens we're going to treat differently because of the action of one? To me, that's the groupthink, the fear that we saw when we interned Japanese in this country during World War II. And by the way, I should add, some Italians as well, okay? So my point is, and Reagan rightfully apologized for that. I just see the scariness of when something like this happens. Mob rule. You know what? More than 50% of us agree with it, let's do it. Even though 50% of them didn't agree with this guy to get elected. That scares me a little bit.
Well, I think what everybody has to be concerned about is the erosion of constitutional rights. And when you hear a conversation like this, a dialogue, when you're looking at the future president of the United States talking about disenfranchising people from their constitutional rights, that's a scary conversation because a lot of people that don't understand rights, they think of them more as privileges. When your rights become privileges, then they get taken away from you. So when you look at a big event, something that's going to happen, whether it's a terrorist act or another war, something happens, at that point you're going to have
Well, they don't even call it a terrorist act.
Well,
I mean, let's be real
whatever
about
you
it.
call
The
it.
fact that he's driving over a curb with a butcher knife, the same tactics that were used in Nice, France, and that are used on the streets of Israel, we won't even call that a terrorist attack.
Well,
Let's
we
call
did.
it what it is.
So and again, they don't know the motivations. It's going to come out. I'm
Well,
sure
they know
this guy.
because he wrote the motivations on his Facebook
but,
page.
my point is, are you going to take some deranged lunatic with whatever his motivations were? Let's make them as bad as they could be, okay? And now make. Don't you guys have an expression?
what he's
Bad
talking-
case
what
makes
he's- what
bad
he's
law.
talking
We
about-
don't do the same thing when Dylan Roof goes into the church and shoots 9 people.
he's
We
being
don't
put
say,
on
hey,
trial.
let's somehow find every young white guy who looks like him and make sure we put him on a watch list. We never do that.
What
When Tim
he's
McVeigh blows up the Oklahoma City Murrah building and kills all these people, mostly kids, okay, we don't say every guy who served in the military with the crew cut is a terrorist. We never do that. We don't make that next step. So when you start to target any group of people, it makes every group vulnerable.
We're not going to have deportation squads in this country. What he has started a conversation about and what he is going to do is make it harder for people from countries like Somalia to get in here unvetted. And that's a perfectly worthwhile agenda.
Okay,
to
but
have.
you know what? You've elevated the conversation, Mark, to what policy should or shouldn't be. My point is, in my lifetime at least, I have not seen someone so casually that will be the commander-in-chief throw out topics for conversation, laws be damned, facts be damned, and then have this dialogue. And
He's
again,
not
the
speaking
four of us,
as a
hold on,
constitutional
the four of us,
scholar or a
though-
constitutional
Okay, but the
theorist
problem
here.
is,
He's
he is
speaking
the
as a public
commander-in-chief.
figure.
He's
Speaking
picking
as-
the attorney general.
He's not
In
speaking
all
in that
fairness,
capacity.
in all
yet.
fairness,
It's
He'll be
Twitter.
appointing
It's
Supreme Court
Twitter.
justices.
But in
It's
all
Twitter.
fairness, this didn't start with Donald Trump. Of
course not.
You had a constitutional lawyer as President Barack Obama, who was also had the ability through the NDAA to lock up American citizens
Yep.
that they deemed. So this started long before he got there. The problem is
The case in the Supreme Court now was under Bush and Ashcroft, the post 9/11 case that's going to the Supreme Court this year for
But
that we talked about
to
last
Doug's
week.
point, it's the stature of the person saying it. And when you say it, you're not saying it as one of us around this table. You're saying it as the President of the United States. So when you say that, you send messages to other people in the United States that it's okay and that they're not going to have the same restraint you may have. You don't
The
expect.
more he does that, and the more people like the New York Times criticize him, the more people like me like him.
But
Because
you
if
know
they
what,
don't
Mark?
like it,
But you know what, Mark?
There's a good reason. They
What
don't
I'm
like
not
it.
worried about with you doing is
No.
you're not going to go post somebody's hijab off their head and said Trump's right. And even though Trump didn't say to go do that, if you create a climate where the tone, it's an us and them, and it's coming from the highest office of the land, that to me is when it
I
gets
think
scary.
that
All
the
right,
people
just
who are
one.
doing these
Well,
actions
all
are
right.
creating the climate.
I wonder, and we may have a pretty good debate on this when we come back. When we come back, Donald Trump has picked his pick, at least, for who he wants to be the health secretary. And trust me, he's no fan of Obamacare. He's also extremely pro-doctor. Tom Price, he'd like to protect them, meaning doctors, from what he calls frivolous lawsuits. But what would that mean for victims of legitimate malpractice who want to sue? We'll get into that after this.